Okay, thank you for coming to this research spotlight. It's been a long day. I know you don't really want to see my face here. I look like exhausted and stuff. If I could, I would, use a mask to hide the exhaustion. So the problem here is I can't do that. But what I'm talking about, we will be able to do something like that, where I can replace my face with something else. So this entire stream of research that I want to discuss later on is pretty new, so I'll give you a brief background on what this is. We are going to discuss about influencers today, and in this day and age, influencers take on a multitude of different variations, right? An influencer can be an actor, someone famous, someone that you see on TV. An influencer can be someone that's big in business, someone that has a lot of clout. An influencer can be a sports athlete, someone you look up to, someone you feel has something that will inspire you, will motivate you. An influencer can be a pop star, a musician, someone that, again, you see on the silver screen a lot. Could be one of these traditional influencers that you see online, on YouTube. But can an influencer be someone that is, quote unquote, 9,931 years old, someone from Atlantis, a fictional city, and is considered a shark girl? So in the last few years, there is one influencer that more or less hits all of these different checkpoints. And this is one of the biggest virtual YouTubers in the last 5 years or so. So we're going to talk about why this particular weird little avatar can become an influencer, why this entire industry is growing or exploding, and how we can possibly leverage on this. So this is what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to discuss about live streaming as one of these VTubers or virtual YouTubers, and why this is a new era in content creation. So for you to get a better understanding of this, we need to go a bit deeper into the background so you have a better understanding for any of the concurrent findings that we will discuss later on. So first, obviously, the question that you have is, what exactly is a VTuber? What is a virtual YouTuber? So a virtual YouTuber is what you see all these figures, these little avatars. They represent virtual YouTubers. I'll talk about what is a virtual YouTuber. I'll talk about how did they develop, the evolution of the industry itself, and their business model. And given that we are in Southeast Asia, I will discuss VTubers in Southeast Asia as well. Then I'll talk about their dimensions and archetypes. So what are major dimensions that people focus on when we're looking at this? What are specific archetypes that they fall under? How could they be categorized under? Then I will look at some other research areas of interest that might be something that people might want to pursue, something that I might be working on, and so on. So the technology itself as an enabler, helping people that are marginalized get a voice. Parasocialism, a major problem in a lot of these influencer research. Corporate governance, because as it grows, right, you start seeing policies that are put in place to deal with some issues that have cropped up. So what are some of these corporate governance issues, and what is an anti? People who hate some of these VTubers, they will voice, their opinions out. Is this really a bad thing? And we'll talk about the evolution towards a digital hyperreal. This is basically what we call the metaverse, where we are proceeding towards a future where the lines between reality and virtual reality start blurring. So a VTuber is a computer animated character. Most of them are in the style of anime, but not all. So there is a sizable proportion of them that uses the anime style. However, there are also computer-generated characters that look a lot more realistic. Regardless, as long as you're using an avatar to stream, you are considered a virtual YouTuber. So most of these avatars, the technology behind it is usually done through face rigging and motion tracking software. So you can develop an avatar and you can match that avatar to you. So using some sort of OBS technology where if you move, if you have emotions, the avatar will show the corresponding emotions as well. So depending on how sophisticated your design is, even nuanced movements, maybe an eyebrow twitch, maybe like movements in your neck, can also be detected and can be shown using the avatar itself. So as this technology continues to develop, it is pretty clear that a lot of these different actions, movements, emotions will be shown using the avatar. The question that some people might have is, VTubers, are they human? Are they just random anime cartoon characters online? So this is something that a lot of people have mistakenly, I guess, in a way, it's like myopia, right? I see something that's animated, something that looks like a cartoon. I don't think they're real. I don't think there's a human behind it. Some of these VTubers have people behind the avatar. There is also VTubers where it's all AI. So everything is run through an algorithm. The VTuber itself is programmed. So there are VTubers like that. But as of now, majority of these VTubers are actually real. There are people playing the character behind it. So VTubers, you see them, they have a lot of these different stream types, right? So there are VTubers that will sing karaoke, will dance. There are VTubers that play games. There are VTubers that basically do things like ASMR. They whisper things and that triggers some sort of brain, like feeling that you like these types of sounds and so on. So ASMR stuff. They collaborate with others. They can even chat with you, sit down in front of the screen, talk to their viewers, talk to the people who engage with them. Basically, what a content creator can do, a VTuber also can do. So it's just an influencer, but using an avatar. So that's basically a VTuber. VTubers are easy to create. If you look at VTubers, you think it's hard to do face rigging, hard to do motion capture and so on. But there are things like these where it's pretty easy to actually create a VTuber. So, is there sound? Okay, so if there's no sound, it's fine. So you see a VTuber here, and you see this. It's a PNG tuber. So instead of a full avatar, there is this little symbol that whenever the person talks, it lights up. That's actually me. So if you can hear the voice, this is actually one of the classes that we've had that I've collaborated with my colleague in their university where we talked about VTubers as well. So my colleague has created a full VTuber avatar. I've created this random, low effort avatar where I can then talk and showcase, what is a VTuber and all this. So it's not hard to create. There are a lot of platforms, softwares available for you now that you can easily use to generate one of these. Obviously, if you want a more sophisticated model, you need a lot more in terms of effort, in terms of resources, but anyone can actually create a VTuber like this. So let's talk about the impact of VTubers so far. VTubers have a very large following. This is the most watched female streamers for the last 2 years, 2023, 2024. So you can see out of the last 10, the top 10, a majority of them are actually VTubers. They are avatars. So here, this one, and this one. So similarly, in 2024, the top few are all avatars as well. So they are getting a lot of traction in the streaming industry. They are getting a lot of sponsorship and other deals from major companies that you know, like MasterCard. So MasterCard has collaborated with some of them in Hong Kong to actually create a MasterCard promotion based on these VTubers. So it is something that you don't really anticipate before this VTuber boom. But as you look, you realize that there are a lot more different types of sponsorship events. So some of you, I'm not sure people behind the screen, but at least some of the people here, you are from tourism, right? And you realize that even countries are using some of these VTubers as tourism ambassadors. Tokyo has done it. There are a few other countries that have done it as well. So there are avatars that have been used to be to go to different regions. Obviously, it's not like real. They don't really send the person there, but they superimpose it over like images of different regions, create different videos to try to promote the different areas, right? A lot of these VTubers are major music creators as well. So they have performed live in concerts, in big venues. They have sold CDs. They have hit the Billboard charts. So again, the success of these VTubers can be seen very clearly through all of these efforts that they have. Most of these VTubers also participate in different conventions. You know, they go to different expos. You can see, this is an example of a VTuber expo. You can see the crowd there. You can see the number of VTubers participating. So a lot of them participate in this. They do sell merchandise. They do generate streaming revenues. And the streaming revenues that they generate is not small. So a lot of money is involved. If you look at the net worth of the VTuber industry, you realize that it is in the billions. So this is one research report done in 2023, and you get information about the market size in 2024, as well as how it will continue to grow. So the anticipated amount that it should hit would be about 849.95 billion USD. So it is a big industry. And it has pervaded a lot of other, not just entertainment industries, but even other industries like sports. So this is the Dodgers game in the US. They had VTubers participating, supporting the Dodgers, singing and so on. The Dodgers won the Major League Baseball Cup of that year. You have VTubers. If you can't see, this is a VTuber being shown in the little screen here, going to Congress, talking to the Senate about what a VTuber is, why are VTubers important, and you have VTubers participating in major events like the World Expo. It's in Osaka this year. There is a VTuber participating, performing for the guests in the first day of the entire World Expo. So they have pervaded a lot of different industries. It has become very big. So this is one impetus behind why it is an interesting industry to study. Now, how do they make money then? Because some of you, after listening or looking at all these, you might be tempted to try to design an avatar of your own. So how do they usually generate revenue? So most VTubers generate revenue from several sources. You have stream contributions where people donate money to you. So you can use whatever streaming platform you're using, whether it's YouTube, whether it's Twitch. You can allow streamers to contribute money. So this is an example of someone contributing like $100 and adding their super chat comments here. So you can get money from this. The problem is, there is a big cut that Google, YouTube, or Twitch will take. You can do merchandise sales where you create stuff that's around your VTuber and sell it. Sure, you will need to give a cut to the manufacturer, but you will also take a pretty big cut as well. And then you have sponsorship and endorsement deals. You have major endorsement deals from large companies. So the example I have here is, this is an Indonesian VTuber, and they have collaborated with Tokopedia, which is a pretty big platform back in Indonesia. So they will get a lot of sponsorship endorsement revenue from this. So out of all of these different revenue sources, merchandise sales generally will net them the biggest profit, assuming they are able to find collaborators to produce the merchandise, to ship the merchandise, and so on. The others, you have companies, platforms taking a cut, so the profits you get from the others will not be as huge, but it's still sizable, so it's something that you can consider. Now, let's talk about what exactly helped this entire industry grow. Historically, how did this come about? So the first step of what we want to discuss today is to conceptualize the evolution of the entire industry. How did they grow? So we will discuss what I term the emergence phase. So using historical analysis, looking at all these different events that happen, what exactly do most people agree is part of the emergence of VTubers? Then the early growth phase, where it's starting to pick up, but not that quickly yet. And the late growth phase, which is almost where we are at now. We are either at the end of the late growth phase or maybe closer to the maturation phase, but I've not extended it to the last few years. This was when I did it in 2023, early 2024. So with the emergence phase, VTubers first started out very early on. In the emergence phase, it was characterized by very slow growth. Technology wasn't that advanced then. So most of what you have is not fully developed. A lot of what you see early VTubers have, it doesn't look good. Honestly, I will show you what it looks like. It's not great. The demand itself was pretty uncertain because the markets didn't really understand what this was. So it was unreceptive. It wasn't able to expand easily like what you have now. So the first accepted 3D idol, the first use of the technology to create some sort of avatar was this 3D idol called Kyoko Date. You can see the face here. It looks creepy. It looks like the uncanny valley, right? You can see the weird smile there. So that's what I mean by the technology not being that advanced. So this was a 3D idol that was first conceptualized by a company. They thought that if they created something like this, they could actually get a lot more interest in their products. It has a very basic CG avatar. So computer graphics designed this, something very similar to what you see with a lot of these early games. And it was animated through motion capture. The company sent their employees to animate the characters. So they had to put on these mocap suits and they had to move around to animate the character that you see here. The voice itself was also voiced by employees. So very early on, this is what it looks like. You see the limits of technology at that time. Didn't look good. There were a lot of steps in order for you to move, for you to showcase this VTuber. So at that time, there was no mainstream acceptance. It basically crashed and burned. After that, a long time later, because that was in the 1990s, late 2000s, you have this boom of Vocaloids. The first or the most popular Vocaloid that you see is this virtual idol called Hatsune Miku. It was a pretty strong breakthrough in public consciousness. You have a CG character with idol traits and an anime style avatar. In 2016, this was when the term VTuber was coined. It was coined by this character on YouTube called Kizuna Ai. Kizuna Ai is an AI avatar that is designed using motion capture and eye tracking. She had a channel on YouTube. It wasn't very big, but it was decently successful. She coined the term virtual YouTuber. So a lot of the practices that she had, things like keeping the person hidden, staying in character all the time, is still used now for a lot of these VTubers. So in a way, this was one of the first standards that was set in the early or in the mid 2010s. Moving on to the early growth phase, we have a lot of new entrants. More people decided that, this is something that is feasible. We are going to enter. You have an expanding market. The market is now starting to accept these forms of entertainment. But at this point in time, there was still no uniform business model because of all these different entry points, because of the way in which they try to differentiate themselves. So in 2018, you see a corporatization of VTubers. People started realizing that this is actually a viable industry. Why don't I manage these talents and charge them money? Take a cut of what they have. So there are a lot of major talent management organizations that entered the market. These are some of the few biggest ones in Japan at that time. So Hololive and Nijisanji, they were pretty big. What they did was they provided any sort of aid that the VTuber needed. They would provide support, whether it's tech support, whether it's support on all the different aspects of streaming that you need. They might give you financial support, marketing support, other types of organizational capabilities, and so on. They are going to provide you with everything. Your job is to stream. Your job is to take part in the activities that they want you to take part in. If you need licenses for games, they will try to get it for you. If you need licenses for things like songs or whatever, they will try to get it for you. So they try to simplify the entire process of becoming a VTuber, and they get a pretty good cut out of the talents. One of the most standout talents at that time was this character called Tsukino Mito, who popularized streaming content formats that are still popular nowadays. Unscripted type of streaming formats, very similar to what you see with non-VTuber streaming. So this was one of the VTubers that did something like this, using 2D models like what you see here. So a lot of the newer VTubers started picking up these traits, started popularizing these traits. Then we had COVID. All of you, I'm sure, still remember COVID. Not fondly, but yeah, it was not great. We were all trapped at home and we had nothing to do. Because we had nothing to do, people started watching channels and they started finding out about VTubers. So there was an acceleration here where you see live streaming getting a lot more traction during the lockdowns, 300%. That's pretty much a major breakthrough in the consciousness of the public. So this benefited English-speaking VTubers. At that time, a lot of VTubers, you realize, were Japanese. There were a few that weren't, and COVID was when they really made it big. So one major VTuber that made it big then was called Iron Mouse. She grew exponentially during that time. She was streaming on Twitch. She became one of the biggest stars on Twitch. There was a Japanese VTuber that speaks in English sometimes. She also grew pretty big. Unlike Iron Mouse, who at that time was independent, this was under a corporation, so Hololive, one of the bigger organizations that we saw earlier on. And as the number of people increased, the interest in these forms of entertainment increased, a lot of people started clipping content. These clippers, they have a lot more free time now. They can watch the content. They start creating small clips. Live streams are long. 2 hours, 3 hours. I don't have the time to watch everything. But I can watch a 5-minute clip. I can watch a 3-minute clip. So the clippers themselves are part of the entire ecosystem that helped this grow. They translated some of the content that might not be easily understandable to people without a native language, and this serves as a gateway to people who didn't really understand VTubers at that time. So more and more people started getting hooked, or what they call, go down the VTuber rabbit hole, and it grew. Corporations also realized that this is a pretty good point in which they can enter different markets. So they started emphasizing on going global. A lot of these companies started developing English-speaking groups, And one of the English-speaking groups that really became pretty big during 2020 is a group called Myth. This was under Hololive at that time. So the shark girl that you saw earlier was one of these VTubers that broke records. She hit 1 million subs, 1 million subscriptions in 40 days, and very quickly hit 4 million subscribers. Even now, she is retired. She's not streaming anymore. But even now, after her retirement, she's still the top VTuber, the most subscribed VTuber. Most of these English-speaking groups, they actually have a lot of commercial success because they were able to tap into a market that was willing to watch them, and they were able to popularize a lot of these streaming formats and trends that even now a lot of VTubers follow. So these are some of these trends that you see. So if you look into the industry now, a lot of people credit Myth for being one of these pilot studies to show the viability of English marketing. You know, marketing to people that speak in English, marketing to different markets, and this allowed a pretty big expansion into different regions of the world, exposing new people to the industry itself. So one last part of the early growth phase is in 2021, they started doing niche specializations in different areas. So instead of catering to everyone, I now start catering to specific groups. I target specific demographics, I target specific regions. You see this with some of these bigger VTuber groups catering to, say, females, right? Previously, you saw all female VTubers. Now there is a male VTuber group that caters to the female gaze. There are others that stream mostly in their own language, catering to specific regions, catering to specific cultures. So these allow a lot of these groups to grow pretty rapidly as well. Now, the last part of the evolution that we want to discuss is the late growth phase here. So at this point in time, the last few years basically, there are a lot of new entrants. The market has been expanding for a pretty long time. Again, there's no uniform model at this point in time still. But what you have at this point is mainstream acceptance in a lot of regions, but also pushback. It is large enough in the media industry. A lot of streaming platforms now have specific tags for VTubers. So if you're a VTuber, you can easily find the tag, you can easily use the tag. There are categories for VTubers as well. If you look at some of these award streams, you even have nominations for the VTuber category. So you see a lot of negative sentiment during this period of time too. A lot of people, face streamers, people who use their real face, they feel that these avatars are cheating because they're not using their real features, their real faces. They can design some very attractive character. They can appeal to you using this. They don't have to spend time doing makeup. They don't have to spend time, ensuring that they look good for the stream. So there are a lot of claims of them, cheating. There are a lot of claims of them being unfair. So there's a lot of negative sentiment that's growing. Some of these non-VTubers even use the tag just so that they can attract higher rates of audiences into their streams. Also in 2023, there was a pretty distinct shift away from corporate organizations. So previously we looked at how a lot of them actually developed into organizations. Now there's a shift from the agency to being an independent. A lot of these agency virtual YouTubers started becoming independents. They left their agencies, they started up again anew. So because technology is so much more accessible now, everyone can do something like this. You saw my example earlier. And because of that freedom, away from corporate rules, away from corporate responsibilities becomes a lot more value. Most of these agency VTubers started opting to become independent, and you see major companies start losing VTubers. So most of these VTubers started going independent. you have major concerts that are being set up for English-speaking VTubers, something that most people in the past, doubted. They thought that this wasn't viable. Now there are full overseas concerts for English VTubers. One of the first few was started by Production Kawaii. This was the first one, followed by Hololive. This was the second one. And they started integrating with popular culture. You see them spilling across physical boundaries, being integrated into all these different types of industries that we saw earlier. So things like the sporting industry, different types of entertainment industries, whether it's in these theme parks, so they took over theme parks, whether it's some of these channels that has predominantly featured real people, started featuring VTubers as well, and they started growing a lot of other countries. Korea, Thailand, Brazil, China has a healthy population of VTubers as well. So lastly, in the last year or so, you do see a pretty complex state of things. There's a lot of industry backlash. Most of these industries now have started showing problems in the way they run things. So there are a lot of problematic processes that is coming up. There is things like doxing, where VTubers are doxed by their own industry, mismanagement, bullying, disregarding their talents. Some of them are even pushed to commit suicide. Didn't succeed, but that's pretty bad. Withholding pay. So again, another big problem with some of these industries. So these are usually signs of industry maturity. If you look at a lot of the other types of industry growth, evolution, you realize that when policies started coming into play, the industry is starting to mature. So because of all these problems, teething problems, you do see a normalization of practices, you do see policies being set up. So because of that, we can basically conclude that in the next few years, the industry will start to mature. So now let's talk about Southeast Asia then. Southeast Asia is a pretty strong market for VTubers. If you look at Southeast Asia, the Vietnamese market, the Indonesian market, as well as the Thai market has a lot of VTubers that are performing pretty well, and there are a lot of viewers there that watch VTubers. So a few of these aspects that can be attributed to why this is growing so well is the strong fandom culture here. A lot of people here are fans of something, and if you're a fan of something here, you tend to be immersed in the entire fandom. You are interested in the character, you start spending more time, more resources there. So this will help the industry grow. A lot of Southeast Asians are willing to pay a lot more for brands and products that involve their fandom, and they develop a strong sense of belonging to their fandom, a lot more than the people in Japan. So Southeast Asia has a lot stronger fandom culture compared to Japanese fans. Some people here in Southeast Asia are a lot more accepting of VTubers because of their origins or links to Japan. This is something that I will briefly talk about later on. So this is a table of all the VTubers that exist in the 6 locations that is listed: Thailand, Singapore, Malaysia, Vietnam, Indonesia, and the Philippines. These are the total number of subscribers of these VTubers here, and these are the total number of views. So as mentioned, you can see that in terms of views, right? Thailand, Vietnam, and Indonesia are the 3 strongest countries here. So if you look at the number of VTubers that hit above a million, you have 1 in Thailand and 6 in Indonesia. Vietnam, we don't have that much, but we do have some that's slightly below a million. So these 3 countries are countries that are ripe or prime for expansion. So looking at the users of VTubers or the viewers of VTubers in this country, we actually gather a lot of interesting insights. So we've done a study on some of these, and we realized that for VTubers to succeed, a lot of people there prefer localization. So what you saw earlier with the VTubers using the country's culture, using the country's language, is something that they think would help the VTuber brand succeed in their country. There are certain users that prefer internationalization, where instead of having cultural nuances, you go global. You have something that's a lot more generic and people can accept it. But this is not going to help you grow within the region itself. A direct translation using Japanese cultural symbols will be useful in getting initial views, because people who are into anime culture will still view your content, but it's not helpful in helping you grow. So this would not be great. So we've conducted like in-depth interviews with about 101 respondents. Most of them are from Indonesia, Vietnam, and Thailand. We had to translate the interview questions. They agree that VTubers in Southeast Asia is slowly increasing. They are also mainly receptive, but they agree that it's not mainstream. And they feel that there is a slight importance in the nationality of the VTuber, but the nationality will not impact whether they watch you or not. So exposure, like I mentioned earlier with translation, exposure to Japanese media might increase you watching it, but it will not help it grow, because you're just watching it, you will fall off pretty easily. So these are insights that we've generated through the interviews that we've had. Similarly, an important aspect is whether they interact with the international community or whether they interact with their nationality, people of their nationality. This is a difference that people of that country are also interested in. Most have this agreement that VTubers of nationality needs to develop their own identity within the country itself, produce different contents that can attract fans. Karaoke is generally seen as a Japanese type of content. So if you're not Japanese, you shouldn't be using karaoke. Interviews and reaction types of content are usually seen as international type of content. If you really want to be country specific, you want to grow your identity, you need to interact, you need to engage. So chats are usually the best, and talking in your own native language would be ideal. So a few accelerators of growth within this industry: you need to have content that's understandable. If your content is not relatable, it's hard for people to understand. So it's something that you need to keep an eye out on. These are some comments that they've made. So if you have the same language, it's easier to interact. Inside jokes that people in the country can understand. So they want that level of relation. So this is something that you want to keep an eye out on. Connection is something else that you want as well. So you need to try to show that you speak the same language, come from the same country, or channel special characteristics of specific regions. So to develop that connection, to develop that relation. Some people really like patriotism, like nationalism and so on. They talk about things like red blood, yellow skin. If you translate this is actually one of the patriotic quotes from Vietnam. So they actually push for patriotism. If you are the same nationality, you're more likely to be wanted. Obstacles of growth would be awareness itself. Most people are not familiar with what a VTuber is, or they think there is some random anime culture thing, so they don't want to watch it. There is a stigma behind VTubers as well, because little cartoons are seen as, anime. You don't want to be seen as that. You usually consider anime, at least in these countries, as possibly negative, so it's viewed badly. If you aren't able to show culture, you're unable to develop cultural nuance, again, it becomes pretty hard. So these are obstacles to growth. So the last thing that they talk about is the infrastructure itself. Most of these countries have bad infrastructure, where they mention things like, if I have limited internet quota on my phone, I would rather watch easy streams rather than 2-hour, 3-hour streams of VTubers. There are strict regulations, so it limits what we can do. So this is something that we can't change. The country needs to work on the infrastructure, but everything else we can actually work on it to expand the relatability, to expand, our access to these Southeast Asian markets. So the recommendation basically is for localization as much as possible, focus on chatting content, produce content that is relatable within the country itself, and emphasize any points of connection that we have. So I know I'm running out of time, so let me just stop here. I won't go into the other parts yet, and let me just go into the Q&A. So maybe during the Q&A, I will be able to address some of these other things that I've not been able to talk about. So let me look at what questions, or does the floor have any questions? So if virtual, how does the interplay with physical environments work other than an overlay onto images of environments? So the thing here, it depends on the technology that they have, but for VTubers with companies behind them, corporations behind them, usually what they do is they have an overlay of the VTuber model over a live location. And whatever action the VTuber model makes, you will see that in the live location itself. So there are things like meet and greet events where you do see this being used, where they overlay the character onto live locations, and you can actually talk to the character, you can see the character move around in that location. So it's still not really at the stage where we can see a merging between the virtual reality and reality at this point in time, but there are steps towards this. So next question. Based on your research, are you able to share whether cultural differences influence which fans are more enthusiastic about VTubers? Yes, so if we are looking at the research that I have right here, usually what you would see is for people who are into Japanese culture, they're usually a lot more enthusiastic at the start. So they're a lot more accepting, but they tend to taper out if they are shown VTubers for a longer time. My other research that actually looks at like 180,000 live streams has also specific archetypes. So if you're talking about certain cultural differences and preference for specific archetypes, there are archetypes that are a lot more popular, and they are popular in certain segments of the population. So this particular research doesn't look really at cultural differences, but there are segments that will prefer specific archetypes over the other. So with the amount of data that we have, we've done like cluster analysis and so on, and we've identified that these are the 5 clusters of VTubers, so the 5 archetypes of VTubers that we have. So that addresses part of your question. If you want more, I can give you the specific archetypes, specific segments and so on, but I don't really have time here, so you can approach me after the session. So next question. I would like to know about how parasocialism affects the community. So parasocialism is something that is very important in VTuber culture. Why? Because if you have someone that feels that they relate to you, they're more likely to contribute. They're more likely to buy your merchandise. So for people who are not familiar with what parasocialism is, it's a connection that you have, usually one-sided, with some sort of influencer, some sort of celebrity. So you feel that you know them, you feel that you are close to them, but they don't know you. So with VTubers, I wouldn't say it's one-sided. VTubers, you do have close to what we call like maybe a 1.5 side parasocialism, where they do know your profile names, they do know your screen names, because they do see you in the screen, but they don't know you as a person. So they can acknowledge who you are. They might be able to talk about you as a fan, but they won't know who you are exactly. But if they can tap into parasocialism enough, they will be able to maintain this strong relationship. They will be able to encourage you to continue to participate in their streams. Remember, with the ecosystem, you can have people that will clip their stuff. You can have people that will moderate their streams. All of this helps them grow. So the stronger the parasocial relationship, the better the ecosystem they can create. even if you don't take part in most of this, even if you're just purchasing stuff, you're donating money, strong parasocialism will help them generate a lot more revenue through your donations, through your merchandise sales. So, outside of digital technologies, how is a VTuber character different to a character such as Dame Edna Average? So, outside of the digital technology itself, it's not much different. I can actually use Edna Average avatar look to create a VTuber about that, right? So you can just design the avatar in any way you want, and then you can be a VTuber as well. The main difference behind, let's say, a character versus an actual VTuber is, for most VTubers, you have a person playing the role of the VTuber behind the screen. So the term that the Japanese coined is called Naka no Hito, someone behind, the person behind the screen. So you will have someone like that, and you will design the backstory of your VTuber. You'll design all these character tics. You basically build a new person from scratch. So instead of playing you play someone else. There are people that do this, or there are people that just play themselves. There's an old granny in Japan that plays an old character as a VTuber. So I think she's like 80 plus or 70 plus, but she does stream as a VTuber as well. So I wouldn't say that there's a lot of difference. It's just the, I guess, nitty-gritty, like smaller details that will be different. So what draws viewers into coming back for more VTuber content? Is it because of the fun factor, or is the answer more sophisticated than that? So another research that I've done, it's under review, or at least it's with me now. I'm still revising it because we are scraping all the streams, is how would you continue to get people to interact with you, right? So how do we build stronger parasocial relationships so that they keep coming back for more content? There are different levels of commitment that you can actually try to nudge viewers into. One of the ways that you can do this, one very common way, is to try to increase the content that you have out there. If they keep viewing you, they're more likely to build a relationship with you, they're more likely to come back. You can develop fun content. That's obviously something that is good, but you need to ensure that your character is attractive as well. So attractiveness helps with first views, first impressions. People will watch you because of attractiveness, but attractiveness will not help you outside of that. Outside of that, you really need to build on your content. You need to build the entire ecosystem. You need to use clippers, generate a lot of these different types of clips, show all these clips, get them to continue to watch your content, to get them to build a stronger parasocial relationship so that they can continue to view your content, so that they get trapped into your content spiral in that sense. So if someone can basically steal someone else's image face, what kind of ethical issues does this raise? Oh, so talk to Jasper. So, okay, you can actually use someone else's face, right? But there are legal issues with that, because although the VTuber culture is like the Wild West of influencers right now, with not a lot of legal policies, if you are using someone else's form for content, they can probably sue you because you're using something that belongs to them. So not just VTubers, even for real streamers, if you're using someone else's face, someone else's content, like whether it's copyright, whether it's against the brand, you will be held liable. So I would think that this is the same. It has not been tested in court yet. But if, let's say, there was something like this, I would say that most likely the person using the features or form of someone else would probably be held accountable, would have to pay legal fees, damages, and so on. What inspired you to research in-depth into the VTuber industry? I was stuck at home in 2020. So before this, I was already aware of VTuber culture because of Kizuna Ai. I didn't follow the Hatsune Miku and all these other things, but I was aware of Kizuna Ai. I was subscribed to the channel. I was watching a few of the videos. So I was aware of VTuber culture, but I wasn't at least interested in researching it at that point in time. But in 2020, most of us were stuck at home. We had nothing to do. And there were a lot of these English VTubers that were coming up. And because of that, it got me interested. Like, okay, they are shifting from this Japanese-centric culture to an English-centric culture. Is there something to it? So I started collecting data from these English VTubers that first came out. So the Shark Girl and a few of these others that came out, I started collecting monthly data on them. And then I worked with a colleague in Japan, and we started building an entire research stream around these things. So there are a lot of other research components that I've not really talked about, or I do not have the time to talk about, but things like the ability of the VTuber technology to enable people. So Iron Mouse, one of the characters you saw just now, she's actually bedridden. She has immunodeficiency syndrome. So cannot leave the bed, has oxygen tubes and so on, but they are able to stream. They're able to get revenue. The revenue actually help pay for hospital bills. So this technology is very liberating, enabling for certain people. Some of them, they claim, these are their own quotes, that they didn't really feel human until they entered an avatar. So those are some of the other parts of the research stream that I have that I didn't really have time to actually talk about. But you are welcome to ask me about them as well. So is there anywhere I can access this research? I would like to read more about it. We have one published paper on this so far, and there is one book chapter that's coming out. There are a lot of other research that's not by me. So if you're interested in looking at Japan-centric VTubers, Peter Galbraith does quite a few of this. There are some VTuber papers in China. So there are Chinese academics that have looked at VTubers in China as well. So there are a few papers out there. It's not a lot. It's still a pretty new topic, but there is a growing amount. I still have a few papers that are under review. Once they get published, hopefully you will be able to read about it as well. If you want more information in the meantime, you can always approach me. I can talk to you about any of these issues that we've discussed today. And I don't have any more questions here. So does the floor have any questions? Yes.
So I noticed that majority of the avatar are female. So am I right to say that this is a female avatar-dominated industry?
So there are, I've not shown you all the random avatars that exist. There are avatars that are animals. There are avatars that are male. There are avatars that are like weird creatures. But across the board, I would say that there's a lot more female avatars compared to the others. It is accepted that it is a lot easier to get money from guys online, which is why a lot of them actually use female avatars. There are some males that use female avatars as well. And so if you look up the news, I forgot which year it was. Someone forgot to turn off the filter, forgot to turn on the filter, and they saw that it was a male there. So yes, there's a lot of female avatars. Some of them are not really female. So this is something that you would see. But for the male avatars, even though you don't have the quantity, right? There's a lot more guys out there that will be willing to donate, but you have the quality. A lot of females donate a lot of money to the male avatars. So you get a lot more money from them as well. And the female viewers, at least from some of these male avatars, male VTubers that we've seen, they are a lot more supportive. They are like ride or die for their characters, for the VTubers that they watch. So you do see a lot of this happening as well. So yes, I agree, a lot more female avatars, less animal creatures or males, but the quality of some of the fans might be different. So you might prefer like maybe a female fan, so you can design a male avatar. There are also females that have male avatars as well. Okay, I have more questions here. For an organization, is the anonymity of VTubers a strength or a liability in the long run brand building? So if we're talking about the anonymity of the person behind the VTuber, this is usually an industry accepted practice. They will not reveal who's behind the VTuber. There is forbidden information. They call it forbidden information, where people actually leak who is behind the VTuber itself, but there will be no confirmation. So you can take it as a widely accepted secret that this person is behind the VTuber, but the anonymity will still be there. The company will try to enforce anonymity because, again, it is an industry accepted practice. Also, if they know who you are, you get doxxed, like one of the cases that we saw earlier on. If you have a strong person behind the avatar, it is possible that this will hurt your brand building if you hide the person. But in most cases, the brand is built around the character itself. So even when they quit or when they leave, the character retires. So I wouldn't say that this will be a liability if you hide the person behind the avatar. If let's say the anonymity is about the avatar itself, then it's unlikely because usually avatars, they are pretty happy to release a lot of information, a lot of, I guess, the lore behind the avatar. Like this avatar came from Atlantis, it's 9,931 years old. They built an entire story around the character. So anonymity is not a question here because they will release lore of the characters itself. And that lore actually helps in brand building. People are interested in the lore. People start designing like fan art about the lore, clips about the lore, so you actually help grow the community using laws like this. From an ethical point of view, how do platforms regulate harmful behavior or content when a person behind the VTuber remains anonymous? So if you're talking about the VTuber themselves saying harmful stuff, and how the organization actually handles this. So if the VTuber says harmful stuff, the organization will step in. Usually, there are a few cases like this when VTubers talk about things that they are not supposed to talk about, things that are, problematic. If the organization sees a need to step in, they will step in. They might suspend the VTuber for a while. So as punishment, they will explain their actions on the platform, the channel that they use. That is one way in which they deal with this. So the anonymity is preserved and there is some sort of a punishment or some sort of, an action taken on the VTuber. If you're talking about harmful behavior or content by the viewers, so a lot of organizations have legal teams that will pursue if one viewer tries to damage the VTuber behind the person behind the VTuber. So whether it's through doxing, whether it's saying like harmful things, trying to, curse on the VTuber or whatever, as long as you hurt the VTuber, it is possible that the organization might pursue legal action. So that's how they try to protect the anonymity as well. Could the rise of VTubers be considered a reaction to cancel culture and public scrutiny of real-world influencers? This is an interesting question because we've seen in recent years there are a lot of things that have been brewing in the real-world influencer culture that pushes like certain influencers to be cancelled. There are a lot of scandals that have happened in the past decade or so. So I am not sure whether the rise of VTubers would be because of this or would have an impact on the rise of VTubers. So what I can say is that a lot of these problems that the real world influencers face, VTubers might not face them because again, the anonymity protects these people. So I can be evil outside, but when I take on the persona of my VTuber, nobody knows who I am. So I am less likely to be cancelled. But I can still be cancelled based on what I say as the VTuber itself. So there might be an impact, but I wouldn't say that this would be the primary cause or this would be a major concern. So it is interesting, might warrant further study. Yeah. So I have no other questions here. Any other questions?